Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Chad Becker, and for those of you who don't know me, and I have a company called Arco Real Estate Solutions. My company is focused 100% on helping building owners and building brokers either obtain or maintain leases with the General Services Administration. That's 100% my focus. The reason this is my area of expertise is because, well, I worked for GSA for over a decade and really spent the last 7 years of my career within the government focused on leasing on behalf of the federal government. Since leaving my capacity in last March, I've had some success in helping people obtain and, like I said, maintain GSA leases. But I wanted to, and I think the little bit of success that I have had, over the last year has really been predicated on the fact that I like to, or really the foundation of my business has been providing value without expectation. So if you're one of the people I've cold called or spoken to in the last over the last year, you've seen that I'm always willing to answer questions, regardless of whether or not you ever become a client. I always basically end every conversation with, "Look, I'm a resource that's available in the marketplace, and I'm here to help." And this is what this video is. This is an extension of that. So I'm calling this video series. This is the first one of what I hope will be many in a weekly series called Arco Answers. And in the future, what I would like to do is get questions from you all out there who are working in this space or are interested in doing business with the government. Send in your questions. Send in, you can either direct message them through LinkedIn. You can go into my LinkedIn profile and find my email address and send them there. I'm on Twitter at @tchadbecker. So get me your questions and Arco will answer. So while this video has the production value of perhaps a hostage video, in the future I hope that goes up. But what won't change is I want the content value to always be high for you. So to kind of kick off this first episode, I don't have any questions yet from anyone directly sending in, because obviously this is the initial call to action. Send me your questions and I will answer them as they relate to doing business or any questions you have regarding leases with the General Services Administration. But what I do want to spend some time in this first video doing is going over some of the changes that happened to the RLP and to the lease that General Services Administration uses, and that really went into effect in October of last year. And this is kind of slowly making its way out into the marketplace, even though the lease acquisition circular said it was effective immediately as of October. I'm still seeing some of the old documents being used. But should you receive the new RLP and lease in a procurement that you're working on, there are a couple of things that you're going to want to be aware of that have changed from maybe previous iterations that you were more familiar with. The first and really probably the most significant change was to the floodplain language. So the way the floodplain language used to read, and we're talking about RLP paragraph, I think 2.2, the way it used to read is if you were in the 100-year floodplain, if your building was in the 100-year floodplain, you were essentially out of the competition. Now, there were two exceptions to that. A, you were the only player in the game, and the government just needed your building for whatever reason. Well, then they could follow an 8-step FEMA plan, which I always lovingly referred to as the 8-month FEMA review plan, because it just took forever. The other process is, certain municipalities, cities, areas, Florida comes to mind. I just recently did some business there, where whole parts of, cities are, in floodplains, but the government still needs a presence there. So they've just made a blanket exception to doing business in that city. So a couple exceptions out there. But anyways, the general theme of the previous paragraph was if you're in the 100-year floodplain, you're out of the competition because you're not technically acceptable. Well, there was some of you out there who were able to skirt by because though you weren't in the floodplain, you were immediately adjacent to it, and the language wasn't really strong enough to exclude you. So there was a recent change in the new language, and basically what it says is, yeah, if you're in the 100-year floodplain, you're still out, and if the adjacency, if your proximity to the 100-year floodplain actually creates issues with ingress or egress to your building in the event of a flood, then that is also now enough to disqualify your building. So again, if you're a building owner or you're someone representing a building owner who's like right on the edge of one of these 100-year floodplains, you need to be aware of that this language is now in there and that GSA can now rule you technically unacceptable in a competition, kick you out of a competition because of your proximity to a floodplain. So just something to be aware of if this is something that affects you. I think it was a smart change for the General Services Administration, but one that can have adverse effects to people who currently hold GSA leases. So GSA has actually gotten rid of a form. This is great news for both the leasing specialists and LCOs inside of GSA, as well as for those of us who are submitting offers. The 3518 SAM is now gone. So SAM, the System for Award Management, the actual website, has fully taken on the job it was meant to do, and that is it is the source of the representations and certifications. Really, the 3518 seemed to kind of hang around because it was really the only place where the offeror would list their DUNS number, and that's how the DUNS number would get incorporated into the lease. So luckily, this now all happens on the 1364. So when you're filling out your 1364s, make sure you now are putting your DUNS number in the appropriate area on the 1364. So that's good news. A form has gone away. So this is another, I think, good change that came from this. There was some additional language that was added regarding the small business designation, like what it means to be a small business, what's the annual dollar threshold to be considered a small business. For the industrial category that GSA does business with, which is essentially owners of real property that are mini storage facilities, mini warehouses. I can't remember the exact classification, but basically the people that GSA does business with, it's now defined in the RLP what the small business threshold is. So that's good. It hasn't changed, but it's better defined and more clearly defined. Again, DUNS number. There was some language that was added to the RLP. There's now a nice link in the RLP that tells you exactly where to go to get a DUNS number if you don't already have one. Remember, the DUNS number for doing business with the government is always free. It's the most basic level of DUNS interaction. So there's language in there that basically tells you where to go and how to obtain one. So that's a nice clarifying statement. But again, DUNS number was always required. This isn't a major change, just a kind of a helpful clarification item now in the RLP. So again, like I said, the SAM form, the SAM website, it's really taken on its role as being the sole source of the reps and certs. And there's some additional language in there that basically just speaks to the importance of registering in SAM and how to go about doing it. So no change there necessarily, other than the fact that you no longer have to fill out the 3518 to supplement what you're already putting in SAM, the System for Award Management. What else? I think there was one final item. Oh yeah, so again, nothing really new here necessarily, but there was a change I wanted to point out on the 1364. So when you're dealing with a 1364, again, this is your financial offer essentially. There's a section near the bottom of page 1 of the 1364, and it says step rent. So it's now it's always been the intention that was step rents to shell. So some people, when I was working there, it was a frequent mistake to see that number reflect a full service rate. That's never really been the intention, and it's still not. But there is some language now in the RLP that clarifies, like, hey, make sure you were putting in a step rent for shell only. So an example would be if you had intended your shell rate to go from $15 to $18, what you reflect in that line for step rent. So you want to go from $15 to $18 for your shell rent. What you don't want to say is my rate's going from $25 to $28, which would be perhaps your the step to your fully service rate. So that hasn't changed from previous iterations of the RLP or the 1364, but it is better clarified now in the RLP, and I think on the 1364 as well, that that is for shell only. So why is that important? So it's important, and hopefully this would get hashed out, whenever you're going through negotiations with the leasing specialist. But if that were missed, what you would essentially be telling the government is that you want your shell rate to go from $15 a foot to $28 a foot if you were to fill out that section or incorrectly. That's not what you want to do, because that then plays into the present value analysis that the government's going to basically evaluate your financial offer on. And if that's done incorrectly, that's obviously going to greatly hamper your ability to win the contract. So just a couple of helpful tips and some things to keep an eye out as you're looking through the new RLP. And again, one point to that: so when you get an RLP, make sure you look in the bottom right corner. It should say something along the lines of revised 1017. So October of 2017. That's what you should be seeing, and that's how you'll know that you're dealing with the latest and greatest materials. If not, your call, maybe reach out to GSA, let them know they're using an outdated form. If you don't want to ruffle any feathers, then just use the outdated forms and keep rolling with the competition. So good luck to everyone out there, and like I said, send in your questions. I'm more than happy to answer whatever you have out there. And you send in questions and Arco will answer. Talk to you soon.